Hi, I'm Aaron J. Marks of aaronjmarks.com and commercetheory.com. Welcome to my podcast, A Higher Level, where everything we think, see, and do happens on a higher level. For as long as I can remember, I felt like my mind has worked just a little differently than most others. For my entire life, I've been studying, observing, and contemplating this incomparably strange and wonderful phenomenon called human existence, and trying to figure out what it's all about. People say the way of thinking and theorizing that comes from this offers an unusually high and rich level of insight, clarity, freedom, inspiration, and effortless creativity. And that's ultimately what a higher level is all about. The insight to understand how life works, the clarity to see where to go next, the freedom to go there, the inspiration to find joy and wonder along the journey, and the creativity to honor your particular brand of human genius. In this podcast, I'm going to break down and describe the concepts that come from my theories so that you can see into the fabric of the life you're living with greater depth and precision, and use that understanding to improve your results in every way that's meaningful to you. It's the only life you get, and the only chance you have to make a difference here. If there's one thing I know, it's that all lives can improve, and that the human race is just one big collective results improving system. Ready to find your place here? Fabulous. Let's get into the topic for this episode of A Higher Level. I'll see you again afterward and talk more about what it looks like to work with me. Until then, let's dive in. Hello, this is Aaron of aaronjmarks.com, and I'm a commerce theorist, and this is A Higher Level. It's my podcast. Looks like we're on episode 43, which is the fourth. Nope, did that one already. Episode 44, which is the fifth episode of the second series of season 2. And this series is all about my new theory of commerce, commerce theory, I call it. I'm writing a book about it called Seeking Completion, and it's about the 5 hidden layers that you'll find in every single human interaction. So we're on the fifth, and we're on the third layer. The third layer. So we've done ontology, we've done theology, and now this is sociology. And these are the groups that we create around shared trade-offs and perfections. So, really briefly, ontology is about what exists. It's also about what, like what is even necessary for existence to happen. And that we can say, in a sense, existence includes not only what is, but what could be. Or even like a sense of what could be, right? That didn't exist necessarily. By various notions of classical theism and physical cosmology. And we're consigned to space-time, and we have to make decisions about what to sacrifice to what, right? Because we can't do everything. We can't support every cause, and there are causes that compete for our allegiance, right? And allegiance is a word that signal or that looks forward to sociology. But the answers that we offer with our behaviors, and the places we spend time, essentially the places that we offer our worship, because that's essentially what we're going around doing, is worshiping at one place after another. Some of them are religious institutions, but not all of them. But we form this notion that we're all looking for valuation of some kind. I mean, we're all looking for valuation. We're all looking to maximize it. And so our behaviors indicate where we think we're going to find the highest possible value. Because the moment we think that we're going to find some higher value, that comes from balancing our behaviors and our allegiances, in a different way, we are going to switch to that one, right? We're gonna change to that. So a theology is what you're doing with your life right now, and it's essentially your way of saying, I think this is the most valuable possible thing that I can do with my life, right? And that may involve you, it may involve other people, it may involve some calculation about an afterlife, right? It may involve some calculation about the environment, right? But that's what a theology is, and everyone has one. You can't escape it. And what do we do with other people and those theologies? Well, we form groups around them, and we join groups of people with the same theology, and we avoid groups of people with competing theologies. And these happen at a number of levels and all sorts of different spectrums. So it's like we may feel like we have a closer theological relationship with one person in our life in certain groups. And maybe, like not as close in other groups, but there's still something of value in that group. So, you belong to that group as well. And, you sort of, you swear allegiance to that group. So that's what sociology is. It's the study of the way that we form groups. And I think that we form groups around shared trade-offs and so we form groups around theologies, basically shared trade-offs and perfections. That's what it is. Yeah. So, if you think about what a theology demands that you do, it demands that you sacrifice spending time in some place to spending time in another. So, like, if I feel like I'm going to find the highest value state playing baseball, um, I'm going to hang around other baseball players and not football players. That is a mild, minor, inconsequential example, but it's a true one. So some people are attracted to baseball. They find a greater sense of completion there. And some people are attracted to football. They find a greater sense of completion there. Groups form around them because we can't sacrifice an equal measure to both of them. So if we if we sacrifice more to baseball, we're going to find other people who are attracted to that theology. And if we sacrifice more to football, we're going to find other people who are attracted more to that theology. And so we form a group around them, right? So again, this is a minor, inconsequential example. It happens at every level of life about much more consequential things like the afterlife and economics and politics, right? And where you eat hamburgers, right? That's another somewhat inconsequential one, but all human groupings are formed around this same kind of core, which is I think it is more worthwhile to spend time here doing this, thinking about this, seeking this, than it is to do these other things. Like I feel I have a my hypothesis of greatest valuation points me in this direction. And so I'm going to spend time with people who have a similar orientation as opposed to these people over here who have an opposing orientation. So that's sociology. So it's the groups we form around them. So, uh, like a philosophical way to talk about it, there are these arguments that exist in the history of philosophy and the philosophy of religion. They're called ontological arguments. Essentially, it's a way of proving that God exists. And there's a podcast that I have. It's called Thinking Hard or Hardly Thinking. I did a few episodes of that a few years ago. A lot of people who enjoy my content like that podcast. There's a limited run. There's 10 episodes, and I sort of tackle big questions in that one. The first episode is Does God exist? And I talk about the most famous ontological argument, which is from Saint Anselm, and I think the 1100s, which is essentially goes like this. It's like, well, if you can imagine the greatest possible being, which we would call God, that being would have to exist in reality, or else there'd be a greater one. So it's like it defines God into existence. A lot of people aren't persuaded by that one. I think it's very clever. I think it does point to something about reality that may indicate there is like, an idealistic nature to it. But you can go back and listen to me, kind of talk about the way it struck me a few years ago. But there's another ontological argument offered by the great philosopher and mathematician Rene Descartes, who said, I think therefore I am. And, he started from this position of absolute skepticism. And he's like, how can I know anything? And he's like, well, I'm pretty sure I exist because I'm thinking. It's like something has to be doing this thinking. So I think I'm pretty sure that's me. He had an ontological argument too, which is um, I conceive of God as the sum of all perfections. Existence is a perfection, therefore God exists. So I feel like a lot of people aren't persuaded by that one either. I would also say I'm not sure that existence is a perfection. I'm not sure. I feel like it's actually more perfect not to exist in a lot of ways. But that gets sort of back to ontology and a lot of metaphysical questions with that. But if you think about sort of what we established about what we would call God or sort of the singularity in the episode about ontology, it's that God exists outside of space and time, right? And so it's like that perfection exists outside of space and time. And then when we go into space time and we have to navigate it, it's like the perfections get diffuse, right? It's like they all meet and they all become, very, very concentrated and potent in this being that we call God outside of space and time, but within space and time, we still have perfections, but we don't get all of them. Only God can do that, right? So, as beings consigned to space time and social beings, beings who must collaborate with one another, we have to pick our perfections, essentially. Okay. So here's a way to think about it. And again, this is another very benign example. There are much more significant and examples of higher import that deal with much deeper issues. But here's one that'll help you understand. So um, let's think about two perfections, right? So and these are perfections that I don't believe can coexist, right? So we have to make a trade-off between them. So one ex one perfection is the perfection of indulgence, okay? And I think indulgence is a good, right? So it's like when I have good food, good wine, it's like, oh, this is definitely perfection. This is definitely a very valuable thing, right? And so my wife and I love good food and wine, and I feel like we like it too much. It's something that we have a hard time controlling, but we love to go and eat in nice restaurants. We love to end the day with ice cream and wine. And we know that we are sacrificing another perfection, which is a very high level of fitness and physical attractiveness to that perfection of indulgence, right? So other people have, they place a higher valuation on physical fitness, right? And physical attractiveness. And Heidi, my wife and I, we found this place, where it's like, okay, we do value the perfection of indulgence, but we also value the perfection of fitness and attractiveness. And so we have a sort of place that we've struck that balance, which ends up with us probably both being about 10 pounds heavier than ideally we are, but that also comes with it the permission to indulge more, right? So that's our way of balancing that, right? And so she and I have this social group that we've created around that, right? This sociological entity, which we call our marriage. Now, imagine for a second if we both suddenly made different calculations about this, right? So, what if she began to value physical fitness and attractiveness 25% more, and I began to value indulgence 25% more? Now, I could find another person who had a similar valuation structure, right? We would both be heavier. And she could find another person who also had a similar valuation structure. They'd both be a lot lighter, but a lot more trim, right? Um, we would be indulging more. They would be exercising more, eating a lot less, right? But as Heidi and I have calibrated it, we have that harmonious social group around that shared perfection that balances indulgence and fitness at the point that we do. You see? So every social group that coheres, that stays together, finds a balance like that, right? So that's what I mean by shared perfections and trade-offs, right? Um, so we've placed the trade-off between indulging and keeping fit at a certain place, and it suits both of us, and we're both attractive enough for each other, but we also permit a level of indulgence that we both enjoy, right? So that's how this works. Now you can find this in all sorts of places. You can find this in core values in your company. You can find this in economic outlooks in your political parties, right? So I think everyone is after some sort of perfection that ultimately points to that original ontology that eventually split into space and time, and fractured those perfections and, essentially demanded that we cannot have all of them, right? And we'd very much like to have all of them. That's what we crave. But ultimately, we're like, okay, which perfections can I maximize? And those are the ones that I'm going to, create a theology around. And then other people of that same theology will form a group with me around those. And actually, I had one more thought about this. They always involve trade-offs, right? Because we can't be in all places at all times, and we can't do everything. We can't have both quality and speed, right? Yeah, I mean, in some ways we can, but I think you understand what I'm saying. It's like, so if I want if I want speed, I have to go to this place with this group. And if I want quality, I have to go to this place with this group. I can't maximize both of them. So I have to pick which of those I'm going to maximize. And we create groups around those sense of, of maximized values. So that's what sociology is. Every group that you find, is going to have that operating somewhere. It's the response to being, and figuring out what to sacrifice to what. And we form groups around those trade-offs. So that is sociology. All right. So that was episode 5, episode 44 of A Higher Level. In the next episode, we're going to talk about anthropology. What does that mean? And how do we add that layer to commerce theory? So I'm Aaron J. Marks. I'm a commerce theorist of aaronjmarks.com. This is A Higher Level. And we're getting to the end of a series about my new theory of commerce. All right. I'll see you in the next episode where we'll talk about anthropology. Thanks for joining me on A Higher Level. If I've done my job right, you're seeing, thinking, and acting differently, with more clarity, more decisiveness, more intention, more success. The current state of your life is just a set of results, and they can all be improved. Doesn't matter whether it concerns yourself, your family, your friends, your community, your workplace, your investments, your world. Behave differently, act differently, communicate differently, and your results will change, guaranteed. But how do you change your actions, behaviors, and communications? If you're unsure, give me a shout. I've helped dozens of motivated leaders and organizations like you and yours to improve their results by discerning exactly the right next step. It's something not everyone can do, and it happens to be my specialty. Sound like something you can use? Learn more about me on all my media channels and reach out to start your own conversation and improve your life in every way. There's nothing like it. And you're worth it. Because if you're not, then no one is. Thanks again for joining me at A Higher Level. I'll talk to you next time, and we'll continue to see, think, and act on a higher level. Until then.